That ends statements and reports. I'll call the clerk for the next order of the day.
Petition amends self-defence laws to be considered.
Mr. Limbrick.
Thank you, President. What happens when Victorians fight back against thugs that invade their homes? And this is a question that many Victorians don't really know the answer to. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate Carly, who is the petitioner who put forward this petition, who managed to garner 20,554 signatures from Victorian citizens. Carly didn't do this because some ideological concern or because of a policy belief. Carly did this because she herself is a victim of a home invasion, and I believe Carly is in the gallery right now. Many Victorians have had the unfortunate situation where their home has been invaded by violent people to rob them or do them harm, and some of these Victorians fight back. Some of them fight back. There was a man who I've met in my electorate. His name's Aaron. His home was invaded. He lives with his wife and teenage daughter, and his home was invaded in the middle of the night, and his wife called the police, and Aaron, being a resourceful man, he had a baseball bat near his bed, and he went and chased this thug out of his house. Now, we don't know if that man was armed that was robbing him or not, but when I went to visit Aaron, he lives in a beautiful place in Clyde, beautiful area. All the neighbours know each other, people from all around the world, very peaceful, and yet their suburb, the place where they live and call home, has been constantly attacked by people invading homes. And I asked Aaron, what would have happened if you had hit this guy in the head with your baseball bat? And he said, I don't know. And I said, I don't know either. And in fact, most Victorians don't know. Now, under Victorian law, you are entitled to defend your home, but it must be what they term a proportionate response. And what is considered proportionate is left up to the police and the courts. And it's quite unrealistic, I believe, to put yourself in the mind of someone who's had their home invaded, who is concerned about their family and what might happen to them. They don't know if someone's armed. People are not considering what is proportionate force. They are considering what might happen to my family, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to defend my family against these thugs until the police arrive. And there are many Victorians like this. And what this petition is proposing, and what I've proposed in this parliament before, is we look at something called castle law. And what this is it basically sets the default of the law so that it sides on the side of the homeowner that is defending themselves, as long as they're not doing anything egregious, that they are genuinely defending their home, that they know that the law has their back. And even under the current system, it is not clear to Victorians. The government hasn't told people what they can and can't do in these situations. People are concerned that if they fight back, they might very well end up getting in trouble with the law. In fact, it happened not too long ago in Queensland. A man defended himself against a violent home invader. That man who was attacking him in his home ended up having a heart attack and passing away. The homeowner was charged with murder, and he stood trial, and the only reason that he was acquitted was because they got an expert witness that was a medical expert that said that the heart attack that the man suffered was not due to the attack from the homeowner. It was due to the assailant's methamphetamine addiction, which damaged his heart, and that's why he passed away, and the man was acquitted. Nevertheless, he was dragged through the courts for an extended period of time. He lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees, which has put his family in a terrible financial situation, and not to mention the mental stress that this poor man had to go through. I don't want Victorians going through that. I think that Victorians should know that the Parliament has their back, that the law has their back when they fight back against violent thugs. And I think that that's what this parliament should do. The government claims that they're being tough on crime. You cannot claim that you're being tough on crime when you turn your back on those who want to fight back against thugs.
Ms. Ermacora.
Thank you, President. And thanks for the opportunity to speak on this issue. I'd like to start by thanking and acknowledging all of the petitioners and in particular Carly that you mentioned, Mr. Limbrick. That must have been an awful experience and it's indeed an awful experience for anybody who is a victim of crime. I'd also like to acknowledge Mr. Limbrick's continuing advocacy in relation to victims of crime. You've been truly influential in shaping some of our legislation in relation to victims in this term of government, and I thank you for that. We have recently had a very similar debate on this topic in this chamber, so it's likely to be no surprise some of the material that I'll cover this evening. Well, that's an interesting clock. Okay. Lucky I'm going nice and slow. Is that 5 minutes starting now? Righto. I'd like to start by saying that any victim of crime is one too many, and that's why we continue to crack down on offenders with a range of new laws that back the work of Victoria Police. And I want to urge Victorians who always call the police in an emergency or where there is danger or a threat to safety. Whether it's in your home or whether it's elsewhere, police have the training, the equipment, powers, support to respond to crimes, threats and other emergencies. Attempting to respond to a perceived threat or unlawful behaviour is risky and can result in unintended harm to yourself or others. And let's face it, no material possessions in your home are worth your life. Treating self-defence in the home differently to self-defence outside the home is an obvious potential to encourage people to equip themselves for such defence. And it is unfortunate that that use of weapons too frequently ends up with the person trying to defend themselves being injured themselves. And to escalate the behaviour and response to those who engage in unlawful activity. Kat Burney, the Director of National Women's Safety Alliance, and in relation to calls for capsicum spray, which I have, the legalisation, which I have responded to before. She said, what are we suggesting will happen when a potential victim is armed with pepper spray? What happens when the violence escalates and the perpetrator is also armed with the same weapon? So, Ms Burney also quoted a 20-year-old review into people with pepper spray injuries from the Journal of Clinical Toxicology. And the review found that patients with pepper spray related injuries tended to be older children and young adults. And just before I sort of finish up, the Crimes Act 1958 provides that a person will have acted in self-defence if they believe the conduct is necessary to defend their lives and if it is a reasonable response in the circumstances as they perceive them. So in closing, I just wanted to quote a piece of research. This is from the University of Oxford, and it's a study on public risk crime, public health and safety. The Stand Your Ground laws designed to protect individuals who actively defend themselves from crime have not improved public safety, is their conclusion. And that is certainly, I acknowledge, in the context of widely available guns in the US, but also since 2013 in the UK, there's no discernible trend either way in the results of having changes, self-defence changes similar to what Mr. Limbrick is referring to. So that's my thinking, and certainly the thinking of the government at this point. But I thank you for raising the issue and causing me to have a reflection on it again. And I thank the people in the gallery.
Mrs. Deeming.
Thank you, President. I rise to support this petition, and I commend all of the petitioners for coming together and raising this issue, because as we all know, the criminals are in charge in this state. In Victoria, you can be asleep in your bed, your children are asleep in theirs, and if you hear a noise and you get up and you find someone in your house, you see a man in a balaclava moving towards your children's door, your heart's going to stop. You are not going to be thinking. You are just going to instantly and brutally defend, not property. Nobody cares enough to die for property, of course not, but for our children who are also in our homes. Yes, we would die for our children. Yes, we would risk any kind of injury for our children. No, we wouldn't hesitate, and we shouldn't be punished for that. That's a totally healthy human instinct, and the only one worthy of any kind of parent. Police are trained, they are equipped. We just got told that if this happens, we're encouraging you to call the police. I just can't believe that, actually. I will read it out. In Victoria, police shortages have led to widespread underreporting and a growing number of unsolved cases. The reality is that many offences go undetected and are not investigated simply because our police force lacks the resources to respond. PAYAC figures showed that we've got a shortfall of 2,333 available recruits. That includes approximately 700 officers on workers' compensation, 300 senior officers expected to take early retirement packages, 233 staff on extended sick leave, and 1,100 vacant positions yet to be filled. The Acting Police Commissioner has acknowledged it could take up to 5 years for Victoria Police to return to full operational strength. We can't just call the police. Not enough police, excess of violent crime. And then we get told if we get injured, well, you escalated it. That's really incitement, isn't it? If you've got a weapon, then that's just escalating things. No. There is no good reason for a stranger to be inside a home uninvited. They've already crossed the line. They've already broken the law. They've already demonstrated that they're there for no good reason. And what the petitioners are asking for is extremely reasonable. I've mixed up my notes with rage. So they're not calling for vigilantism. They're actually just calling for clarity, the kind of clarity that already exists in many other jurisdictions. In West Australia, householders are allowed to use any force they reasonably believe necessary. In South Australia, the laws are relaxed in terms of proportionality in home invasion cases. In Queensland, it has a specific defence of dwelling, and it is strengthening it further. And as we've heard, in the United Kingdom, the law protects householders unless their actions were grossly disproportionate, recognising that fear, darkness and urgency shape a human response, especially because it's in your home. And there is no category where it is reasonable for this random stranger to be in your home. That man in Queensland who we heard of before, the man that he found in his house, as I understand it, he found him near his child's cot. I wouldn't blame him for whatever someone did if they found a strange man over their baby's cot. Absolutely nothing. Probably give him an award. These laws in other jurisdictions have not caused chaos, they have not unleashed violence, What they have done is remove ambiguity, protect the innocent, and send a clear message that in your own home, when strangers enter, threatening violence or not, you are not going to be punished for reasonably assuming the worst and defending yourself as a person without any training and without having been negligent in any way for not having that training. These are just families in their homes. And in Victoria, they're families in their homes with no police on call that you can rely on. There's no good reason for uninvited strangers to be in our homes. There's no good reason to expect frightened parents, lone grandparents, single women, teenagers. There's no good reason for them to expect them to behave like trained professionals. And there's no good reason for the law to hesitate when any of those people do their best to survive and to protect their children. In the hallway, in that moment, the only thing that matters is protecting the family.
Sorry, Mrs. Deeming, time's expired.
That's fine.
Mrs. Hermans?
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank Mr. Limbrick for sponsoring this e-petition, which reached the high bar of 20,554 signatures. We know that the petitioners are requesting the Legislative Council to call on this government to amend the legislation to provide more clarity and protection for self-defence in the home in line with the United Kingdom approach. Now, the United Kingdom has special provisions for self-defence in a person's home where people only contravene the law if their actions are considered grossly disproportionate. This recognises that people have more at stake in defending their home than they would in public, but Australian law does not recognise this distinction. Victorians are frightened in their own homes, and the headlines make it impossible to ignore why. A 60-year-old man in Gladstone Park was stabbed repeatedly, attacked with a hammer and shot. His wife, 57 years old, was threatened at gunpoint. In Kew East, a husband was stabbed 11 times, and in Mount Waverley, a crime so barbaric it shocked the entire nation. A pregnant woman and her partner were decapitated in their own home. These events represent a rapidly escalating pattern of violent home invasions in this state. The Crime Statistics Agency reported 30,545 residential burglaries in the year to June 2025, a 13.9% rise compared to the prior year. Aggravated burglaries have surged 22%, reaching 7,856 incidences. Victorians are living with this reality every day, and they are demanding change. That's why this petition smashed the threshold of 10,000 signatures required for debate. That's why it received 20,554 signatures. Victorians have sent us all a very clear message. Review our self-defence laws and tackle the crime crisis. Right now, our laws are simply not keeping up with the danger that our families face. The petition today is about the extent a person can defend themselves in their own home. Now, it was Sir Edward Coke who put it plainly centuries ago that a man's house is his castle, a principle rooted in English common law. Your home should be a safe place. We all remember the old movie from 1997, the Australian movie, the comedy called The Castle, about restoring and keeping your family home. But this would not be a comic film if we had to make it about the burglaries and the thefts that take place in our homes, when people are so scared that families and parents are resorting, as they did in my region, where a mother made sure that each of her children had baseball bats under their beds or under their pillows because they knew that the home invaders were coming back. They had taken their car keys and the police said they will return. And it took a week, but they did return. And by the time they returned, the fear had escalated so much. The father's instinct to protect his family had escalated so much. And it is a miracle that they ran off with the rage that the man had to protect his home and his family. In Victoria today,
the principle is compromised by ambiguity. Our self-defence provisions in Part 1C of the Crimes Act are meant to protect people acting in fear for their lives. Self-defence was first codified in 2005 under a Labor Attorney General, Rob Hulls. His activist reforms replaced long-standing common law and reshaped our justice system, but not always for the better. The Labor Party ushered in judicial activism, softer sentencing, greater complexity and a shift from impartiality towards social justice. In 2014, further well-intentioned amendments were made primarily to combat family violence, especially after defensive homicide was being misused by violent men. Section 322K of the Crimes Act says a person is not guilty if they believe their conduct is necessary in self-defence, and if that conduct is reasonable, as a reasonable response in the circumstances as they perceive them. But herein lies the problem: reasonable. That single word is arguably vague and subjective, and I mentioned that when we were talking about some of the bills that are coming before the House and have come before the House to do with children. Reasonable. Now, in a violent home invasion, it's impossible to measure in the split second during a home invasion what reasonable might be. And people should not be expected to become legal scholars in the dark of the night as an armed criminal forces their way into their home. Other countries use clearer standards, and we need to as well in Victoria.
Sorry,
it is simply
Mrs. Herman,
not
time's expired.
okay.
Mr. Limbrick, in reply.
Thank you, President, and I thank everyone that's contributed to this debate today. I just respond to a couple of things. Ms. Ermacora said that, possessions in your house are not worth dying for, and certainly that's true. My television's not worth dying for, my PlayStation's not worth dying for, my microwave's not worth dying for. But you know what is worth dying for? My family. And I think that every parent in Victoria feels the same way, and they want to know that when their family is under threat from violent criminals, that when they fight back, the government, the law has their back, that this parliament has their back. I think it's absolutely essential that we have clarity on this. The government has not provided clarity to people in what happens in these situations. Unfortunately, it's becoming all too common that people have their homes invaded. The people that I mentioned before, Carly, the petitioner, and also Aaron, as is common for people who've had their homes invaded, they no longer feel safe in their homes and they leave. And in fact, both of these people are leaving their homes. It's such a sad and traumatic thing that we have people even leaving our state because their home was invaded. I urge the government to act on this. I know that the government sees aggravated burglary as a serious crime. They have laws that we'll be debating this week on this very topic, on how serious it is. If they really feel it's that serious, because it is serious, then they should be talking about what people can do to defend themselves against these violent thugs that invade their houses. Thank you.
The question is, the House takes note of the petition. All applicants say aye. Aye. Against no. The ayes have it.